They were promised glory. Instead they found fire, sand, and silence. One man remained, broken in body, unbroken in oath. Weeks earlier, they marched into the sands with heads high, the forgotten legion chasing honor on the empire's edge. They were led by General Alias, a man who had never known defeat nor doubt, whose name was spoken in the capital with reverence and fear alike. Under his command, every campaign had been a triumph, every enemy a lesson in Roman strength. Yet in this endless desert, his confidence met something older than empire, an expanse that cared nothing for banners or legions. The first omen came quietly. A village swallowed by silence and sand, its gates half buried, its wells dry, its hearths cold. Not a soul left breathing, even the animals had vanished, leaving only footprints that ended mid-step. As night fell, shadows moved in the dunes, gliding just beyond torchlight. They chased whispers but found only wind, and the men began to murmur that the gods had turned their eyes away. By firelight, they sat, men of steel grown silent, their armor glinting faintly beneath a foreign sky. The desert seemed to listen to them breathe. Alias whispered strategy beneath the stars, tracing lines in the sand that the wind erased before dawn. He spoke of formations, of discipline, of Rome's reach into the horizon. But fate had written a different plan. Morning brought only absence. The eastern outpost was gone, the men with it, and in their place lay a trail of shields half buried in the dunes. They found only steel, cracked, bent, and still warm from the kill. No footprints led away. The desert rose in fury later that day, swallowing their tracks in a storm that screamed in tongues no Roman could translate. When silence returned, hunger and thirst came with it, and the march began to rot from within. The rations thinned to crumbs, the water skins ran dry, and still the orders came to march, or die where they stood. The discipline that had once defined them now felt like a curse carved into their bones. Fear turned inward. One of their own deserted under moonlight, choosing the unknown over command. He was found at dawn, buried to the neck in sand. A lesson was given, loyalty carved into flesh, before the sun rose high enough to burn it dry. The legion stood afterward, but not united. Each man's silence became a different kind of fear. That night, the desert breathed again. Whispers of revolt crawled through the camp, louder than any desert wind. Then the sand itself seemed to shift and give birth to ghosts. Riders appeared from the horizon, cloaked in pale robes, their faces hidden, their eyes black with intent. They came without banners, without sound, only the rhythm of hooves like a heartbeat in the earth. Steel met sand, shields rose, spears braced. The forgotten legion prepared to be remembered. The desert howled with fury, men screamed, and blood turned the sand to clay. Alias charged not toward victory, but toward memory, toward the echo of Rome. His men followed, bound by honor even as their formations shattered. They fought not for survival, but for legacy, dying with the eagle raised, and their faith unbroken. The raiders vanished like mirages at dusk, leaving behind silence and dust. The legion, bloodied and broken, found breath in the emptiness. They counted their dead by torchlight, names spoken like prayers that the desert quickly devoured. Alias dug the graves himself, his hands raw and bleeding, not as a general, but as a father mourning his sons. Their camp became a fortress of fire, not to repel an enemy, but to hold back despair. To Marcellus, his second, Alias confessed the truth: there would be no rescue. The empire would not send help to ghosts. Retreat was forbidden, not while the eagle still stood, not while any Roman still drew breath. He sent one rider with one scroll, a final plea, written in a trembling hand to a city too distant to hear. But the desert is a graveyard of messages, and no words escaped its grasp. When the rider did not return, Alias understood what the silence meant. There would be no victory. only legend. Marcella, the camp scribe, spoke softly of Rome, of family, of duty, of endings that echo. Her voice steadied the men as the horns cried from the east. Every soldier knew what that sound meant. Their final dawn had come. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but with the storm of an approaching army. Steel clashed, sand turned red, and the forgotten legion roared one last time. Alias fell with the eagle still raised, a symbol of defiance against both fate and oblivion. His name was never written among Rome's heroes, but he vanished not in defeat, only in silence. The wind carried him into myth. When the battle ended, the field lay still. The survivors, hollow-eyed and broken, stood around a banner no longer waving but never fallen. The dead needed no more orders. The living had none to give. No scroll would carry their memory, only sand and the hand of one who remembered. They built fires not for warmth, but for remembrance, and they warmed their bones on the ashes of home, whispering names to the night sky. Hope was a luxury they no longer trusted. Then from the horizon, a shimmer appeared, a glint of bronze in the distance, a sound of hooves cutting through the wind, a whisper of salvation from a voice they had buried. Rome had come, late, but come nonetheless. The survivors fell to their knees, not in worship, but in exhaustion and disbelief that they were no longer alone. No one found Alias, only his blade, still warm where it lay, still waiting as if for his return. They were saved, but not whole. The eagle had never fallen, and neither had they. Around the graves the rescuers found order, each one marked, each one remembered. No slaves had dug them, no scribes had recorded them. A general had done it himself, one name at a time, one scroll, one truth. What the desert tried to bury, the survivors carried home. Rome, in its glory, had to choose to remember its sons, or to erase their sacrifice beneath official silence. No parade awaited them. No triumphal arch bore their names, only a stone, half buried in sand, where valor had turned quietly into legend. Their sons would train not for glory, but in silence, in the shadow of men who had stood and vanished. From their ashes the tale endured, not as orders, but as warnings. I was only 16, I carried their memory, and I remember everything, not in museums, not in triumphs, but here, in the quiet corner of a home. They became legend, painted, recited, reimagined, but never fully known. This land was once blood-soaked. Now it grows figs and memories. He never returned to Rome, but in stone he stands eternal, the ghost who would not flee. This is not a tale of victory, but of honor, sealed by silence and sand. For some, Rome was a city. For others, it was a promise worth dying for. You've just heard the story of the forgotten legion. May their silence echo through time of Rome, and to the lost we remember.